So that's it for the in our garden section. Now we're going to move into color cures for the August blahs. We do this in sections so that we can post the video in sections of the recording and people don't have to watch the whole webinar to find the part they want.
So hello, welcome to Weekend Walkabout in our gardens and yours virtually.
Today the topic is color cures for the August blahs. We're coming to you from gardenatoz.org. I'm Janet McConovich.
I'm Stephen Nicola.
Our daughter Sonia Nicola is, thank goodness, with us, keeping track of the questions that come in and the technical problems that happen and are communicated through chat. And today we have somebody special coming in. Not these people who are pretty special.
There's everybody.
Celia and Mary, they went all the way with us one year in order to play in the garden with Pierre Bennerup and Cheryl Bennerup. Pierre, and we'll let him introduce himself through some recordings we made just recently.
This is Sanguis sorba. I think the common name is Burnet. It is in the same, it's the same family, if not genus, as the herb Burnet. Oh. This is a variegated form. I found the plant in China and sneaked it back in, violating the law, I'm sorry to say, but that was about 25 years ago, so I think I'm safe. But it's called Sanguis sorba Dahlia marble, and Dahlia actually means marble in Chinese, but it doesn't, and it's the name of the town. I found it in the mountains up above the town.
Sorry, that's Stephen's finger is a little bit fat.
My friend Alan Bush, who now lives in Kentucky, in Louisville, he and I were on a picnic many years ago, and we were on the Skyline Drive, and we were driving along. It's about this time of year. We saw this beautiful phlox blooming on the side of the road. So we stopped the car and backed up and said, well, it's not the wild, it's a variation of the wild fern. The wild fern, which is common around here, is kind of tiny little lavender flower, sometimes all white. But this one was definitely different. So we said, well, we didn't have, it was growing in some grassy areas, so we didn't have anything to dig it with. So we decided to pick the flower and mark it. So we marked it by putting a little ring of pebbles around it. So, well, how are we going to find it again? Because the road goes curving like this, and every curve looks like the other one, and we thought we'd never find it. So Alan said, hey, look, right over there, it's a sign that says speed limit 45. We'll find it from that. We'll measure it. It's 10 feet from speed limit 45. So he went back later on, dug it up, and we both propagated it since then. And of course, its name is Phlox Speed Limit 45. But I'm going to tell you the story. I didn't name it. In fact, it is not considered proper etiquette to name plants for yourself.
Yes.
I one time got hold of a bunch of seedlings from a lady whose boyfriend was a breeder, and he somehow bought a sailboat and disappeared. And she called me up and said, get these out of here. And I did. Okay. So I didn't know what to do with them. This is when I was first in the business. So I had a colleague in Oregon. I called him up and asked him if he would want them. He said, yeah, sure, send them out. I forgot about it completely until about 20 years later. I was in Houston, Texas. And I was given an award by the American Horticultural Society. And it was a 3-day event. One day we went to a very nice garden center, specialized in roses, but they had other things. And I saw this very large pot of Siberian iris marked Monrovia. Maybe you've seen that name.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I said, that's the best looking Siberian iris I have ever seen. I went to pull the label and see what the name was. And I looked at it and I said, Bennerup Blue. That's me. I had no idea where it came from. I had never been to Houston before in my life. And here it is. And they had beautiful plants there. Next to it, some Shasta daisies. Everybody assumes that Shasta daisies must have come from Mount Shasta. That's not true. It's a hybrid that was done by Luther Burbank. And he liked the name Shasta. And he thought it was appropriate because Mount Shasta apparently has snow on the top. I don't know. All I could say, it isn't native to Mount Shasta, but it's a beautiful plant.
So this is who Pierre is. Pierre has been all of his life breeding plants. He loves plants. He's part of a special group of people that includes Cheryl that happened to be there making plants when people were very interested in plants and the market turned up as it never had turned up before in the 80s. Some people said, ooh, maybe we can make lots of money now. Most people in the plant business love plants and said, ooh, now we can grow neat, cool stuff because people are buying even different stuff than they were before. And that's what he's been doing his whole life, as well as what Cheryl's been doing. And walking the nursery with him, as Steve just did, talk about plants that are blooming in August, you are going to learn everything about all kinds of plants. And Pierre and Cheryl, I'm so glad that you're here and that you'll be able to take the questions.
Yeah, and we're gonna break in for a second because your sound has gone quite muted. Pierre was fine, the Pierre recording, but now your guys' sound, we can hear you, but it's really low and muted. So we're gonna do a quick sound check before we move on.
Okay, we must have fooled our microphone.
No, it's still quite muted.
Okay, let's see. Do I have a mute on controls here? Oh, we're not muted here.
Oh,
okay.
It got a little better just there.
Did it really?
Talk again.
Okay, well that's
How's that?
A little better. Yep. Yep.
I think our big microphone is readjusting itself. We won't.
There it is. Yep.
Yep.
It's increasing. I think it's figuring itself out.
Yeah,
Okay.
we had
All
the
right,
speaker
great.
too close.
Okay.
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 Great. All right, carry on.
Okay, so
Thank you.
We shall carry on.
And now you actually hit mute. Oh, you actually hit mute. You hit the mute button. Yep, you guys, can you not hear me?
No, I just.
There you are.
I could just forget that the menu wouldn't come down from the top of the screen. Okay, what we're going to do here, we've written a lot over the years about what kinds of things you can put in for color in August and September. And what we've heard from people frequently and from many of you is that what you want to know is about perennials for this time of year. We can get color in other ways. We're going to go over those things pretty quickly to focus on the perennials because everybody out there wants more plants and they don't have room for more trees and more shrubs. They've always got room for more perennials. So we're going to work on perennials, and there are lists that you can work in, starting with things that repeat bloom if they're cut back or deadheaded. We already talked recently about primping perennials. We've given you some examples of things that if you deadhead them, keep blooming, or if you cut them back, bloom again. If you know of other plants, put them in chat. Everybody can save the chat, they can add, and that's what the blank space is for on that outline.
On the next time.
So we're going to tell you just briefly that the flowers are what we love, the color for color, but you need to give things elbow room. You need to cut things back and make room for stuff.
Space is important in the garden.
Very important. It's important for us to be able to walk in and to work, but it also helps us see the color better, to have a little bit of buffer around it. And do remember that you can always get color with hardscape, with art, with pottery, with benches, and the house.
The house itself.
You can paint walls, you can put up banners, you can so don't try to kill yourself on this. It's more important, I think, to have fun with this. So write down the names of things that you know you can cut back or deadhead if you want to share those with other people, and you can just put them in chat. We'll have them all there, and we'll move on to the idea of annuals. Now, annuals are a great summer color, but we're not going to talk about this whole list one at a time. We'd never get through a webinar today. We're going to talk in general about the difference in handling these plants, these annuals in the garden, to make them be more useful in August. And that starts with plant them further apart.
Give them room.
Yeah, don't ask them to be a carpet right away in June when you put them in the ground. Put them in and let them grow. Let them become the fresh new face in August. So when those coleus can grow up and take over. You have plenty of color. in June when you put in. You've got clematis blooming, you've got liatris coming into bloom at the end of June. You've got lots of things going on. You don't need to overwhelm with annuals. So plant smaller, plant more, give them more space, and plant the unusual things. Joseph's coat, well, this one is a different amaranth here, but Joseph's coat goes in green, and then suddenly at the end of the summer, it turns colors.
Yeah.
All over, it becomes something different, the same way that spring is wonderful for lots of differences. Put seeds in. This calendula mass here, pot marigold, calendula, is seed. We scattered the seed in there. By the time the stachys is done blooming, and we've already cut back the mountain bluet, the centaurea, by the time the color from the spring perennials is gone, the calendula have become a force in themselves. You have to thin out the seedlings as they come up, but those were put in as seed. Cannas, put them in as toes. You don't have to have a started plant. Put them in and let them come up as the summer
Let
goes
them
on,
progress.
because then they are fresh. Then those leaf colors and those flower colors are a surprise
Mhm.
and a delight.
Yeah.
And they're fresher. If you put in spiderflower, Cleome, I don't know why people put in Cleome, they stink. I hate the smell of
They
Cleome.
hurt.
And they have spines, but they are prettiest when they first start blooming. When they have necks like this, little kids call them Frankenstein, and rightly so. Put them in, let them be fresh. You can start them from seed, you can put them in later. I lost a garden job one time over Cosmos. Cosmos does not bloom well until the days are shorter. So it's a second half of the summer bloomer. I had a client who was convinced that they bloomed all summer long and I should put them all over in the garden. And I put them all over in the garden, but there was no bloom at the beginning of the year, or very little. So use these things for what they're worth. Use the dahlias for being a glorious plant now. You don't
Now, all the way through October.
Right, you didn't need the flower early on. You could just have greenery up until then. We have a lot of fun with Euphorbia marginata, our native prairie annual snow on the mountain, which is green all summer until right about now.
Just, yeah, it's like, okay, I thought this was supposed to be green and white. Where's the white?
Right, and then boom, it becomes green and white.
And you don't even see it doing it.
And it's a very cool plant. It's an annual, it seeds itself around, it's a native. We grow it in the full sun, but this is at a client's garden in the part sun where it also grows well. It's an impressive thing to look at, and it's a change. It wasn't there the whole summer. Same thing with glads and other summer bulbs, hygridia and ixias. Put them in and just let them come up as they will.
Yeah.
Sunflowers.
We have sunflowers everywhere.
It only takes a sunflower maybe 2 weeks before it's blooming. So you can drop all kinds of seed through the year of decorative sunflowers. Everybody loves sunflowers. The pollinators love sunflowers. Look at that guy. The birds love sunflowers. In fact, all our sunflowers come from the birds just dropping the seeds, and the squirrels moving them around.
Squirrels tend to clump them together. We get clumps of.
Yes. But there are a lot of nice decorative sunflowers, and they're fast. You can put them in and let them do what they're going to do. Aren't they cool? So annuals, that's what you want to do. Use some things that are unusual. Use some things that grow from seed. This is an Impatiens glandulifera. It gets to be about 5-6 feet tall. Hummingbirds love it. And it's unusual. People say, wow, what the heck is that thing? If that's too big for you, this is garden balsam. This is Impatiens balsamina, which is a shorter, and they come from seed reliably. Once you get them in the garden, you can just watch for them and they'll come back year after year. Lantana, it's great for big butterflies, and you want it to be big at big butterfly season. So put it in little and let it grow. You have lesser seeds that way. And then by the time you get into big butterfly season, which is now your lantana is beginning to fill out. So there's lantana, a yellow one right there at our library garden, and a gomphrena next to it. We don't need them at daisy time, but now when we cut the daisy back,
Then we've got
gomphrena, and I'm not sure what I did with the lantana. I think we dug it up and put it in a pot. Flowering tobacco comes up from seed. Smells good late afternoon. Moss rose will come reliably from seed. Is it still coming in your garden, Sonia? This is Sonia's garden under moss rose from seedlings.
No, it never, and I like to mulch that area, and I think it didn't like to mulch as much either. So we have it in a pot on the deck in the back, and it does fabulous back there. But it looks great with the cactus in the front, I admit.
And unfortunately, it's a zone 7 plant, but Pierre told us about a prickly pear that Luther Burbank selected that is a spineless prickly pear, but it's not hardy for you, so you wouldn't be able to grow it there instead. Ornamental salvias are so cool, and salvias are late, it's not like the cosmos, that's when they really do their blooming.
And the salvia is not just that red one.
Right,
You know,
yeah,
I mean,
that red one really pops, but I mean, there's blues and there's purples and there's, is it salvia? You look at also, there's one that blooms
Yeah.
really, really late. I wish that I knew for sure what the name was. So use things for the time that they're going to be there. This is Tithonia, Mexican sunflower. It is a butterfly magnet. And these guys, we started from seed the 1st of June, and they're going to be 6 feet tall. Zinnias, we put seed out there. So use your annuals that way, and the list will go on and on.
It goes on,
Verbena hastata, for instance. Same thing with vines and shrubs and trees. You don't have room for a lot of more stuff. And we've told you in different webinars before about different cool trees and shrubs. So yes, you can use them. And yes, you probably want to go for the smaller ones. Bloomis spirea with its blue in August, especially if you get the gold form.
if you like the blue and yellow together.
There's Worcester gold, and there's one called Little Miss Sunshine. Butterfly bushes we cut down so that they don't get so big as this. They look kind of hoary to us like that. And some of them have spectacularly big flowers.
Look
now.
spectacular,
Grand Cascade.
but
Butterflies didn't like this as much. We gave
No.
these, the neighbors admired them, so we gave them to the neighbors. And
we
put in-
want the butterfly ones.
Yeah, we put in the single butterflies. Franklinia tree blooms is sometimes still blooming with big white flowers when it's turning red in the fall.
Mhm.
Golden rain tree, if you want August color, look for the variety called September, which blooms in August, which doesn't make any sense. But even if you get a regular golden rain tree that blooms in July, yellow, the seed pods that form on it, which are kind of like Chinese lanterns, are still decorative later in the summertime. And hydrangeas, kind of like the 9-bark. We put them in pots. We think they're just, great decoration for
Yeah,
step.
Yeah,
They are big plants,
big.
big plants. So we don't want you to have to look at a big list of these kinds of things. We'd rather you get more perennials, even Rosa Sharon, which you can cut all the way to the ground, and you should if it's dropping a lot of seed. This one's a sterile double form, which is a good one to have. I think it's called Aphrodite, might be Diana. Blue boy there on the left. Cutting them down helps keep the seed more under control. I hate when they change names of things. Maybe Pierre and Cheryl know why they change. I mean, Sephora japonica was such a nice name. Stiphmelobium japonicum is just a tear, but it's in bloom in August. It's a beautiful, easy tree. We've told you about Seven Sun, which when it blooms in late August and early September smells like heaven, and the butterflies like it. The peeling bark looks good. Put only one vine in, one vine that Sonia took out. This is in Sonia's backyard, and she was looking to hide the fence for a while before the tree grew. And finally, when the tree grew, she got tired of cutting the silver lace vine because it can go all the way down the fence.
It will run.
They get big. They're pretty because they, like many of the polygonums, they bloom white, and then the seed pod is white or pink, and it's decorative, almost as if it's still blooming. And then one last one would be summer sweet.
Clethras, lots of them.
Clethras, summer
Very
sweet.
sweet.
Nice native plants. There is a pink one, a couple of
There's
pink
a
ones,
couple.
Ruby Spice and Ruby Glow.
And little ruby or
Okay,
something.
but what we want to do is turn Cheryl and Pierre loose on perennials here, and we have a list. It's you have it in front of you. It's keyed as best we could key it for half sun, shade, sun, so that you have some idea where to put these plants. All of them are hardy to zone 5. We didn't put all of the zones on. It just starts getting to where we can't put everything in, you guys. We can jump to any of these plants that you would like to talk about and Cheryl and Pierre would like to talk about. Thusly, we can say, we don't have to go in order the way they are here. If we want to talk about alliums, we can go click on alliums and take you to the pictures we got of alliums, and then we can go back and pick something else. So I'm going to leave this one to Cheryl and Pierre and say, what would you like to talk about? There were so many plants you were showing us. And if we've got it on the list, we've got a couple of pictures and you can take off from there, or people can ask questions about particular plants. Losing Steve for a bit, so I guess I'll keep going in order until people come up with something else. Alliums, flowering onions, are best known for the great big globe master and allium giganteum. Those are early blooming alliums. This allium senescens, or called curly chive sometimes, is a late July, August bloomer, and so is Allium nutans, which has been hybridized, I guess. Cheryl would know, I'm pretty sure, about Millennium, for instance, one of the new ones. They're late bloomers and give you a lot of color and a lot of help for the pollinators that are in the garden too. So look for some of those alliums to add. These alliums that you add later are not ephemerals. The alliums that come up in the spring, their leaves die away and there's nothing there. These are like chives. They're greenery that's going to be there through the year. And the allium, the curly chives, is particularly pretty foliage too.
And they can grow in a lot of different locations. They tend to be drought tolerant, but you can also have them where you've got moisture or irrigation. Millennium is a very long blooming allium that we really love, but we had a number of them planted in our yard that we really just loved. You're right about that. They can go into so many different landscapes and are so useful, either as ground cover like the sinensis or as a individual planting amongst other plants.
And rabbits won't eat them.
Well,
that's important.
Kind of nice.
Rabbits don't like anything in the onion family. By the way, I'm reverting back to what we talked about earlier, but there are many, many plants that rabbits stay away from. They don't like anything in the mint family. So you can do a very, very nice garden. There are many, many species of plants in the mint family that have beautiful flowers, such as catmint and catnip and so forth.
Yeah, it's a huge family, the mint family. So,
It is.
Yeah. Things that smell good or smell bad, I guess rabbits would think. Do any of the alliums seed themselves around? The allium senescens doesn't seem to seed itself around, but I've been hearing from people that some of the taller alliums do seed around a bit. What's your experience?
Well, we have this wild garlic chives in our yard, and they seed themselves everywhere. I'm not even sure it's native. It's actually not a bad looking plant, but it's extremely invasive. The ones that are in commercial production are, generally speaking, either sterile or not very bad seeders.
That's good to hear.
On the subject of seeding, we have a question from Janet in the chat. If you don't want the allium to seed, when would you cut them back?
Cut them back when the flower color goes away. I mean, the seed pods are actually quite pretty. They look almost like a dandelion seed pod in the Allium millennium. But if you don't mind cutting them back at that time, they won't seed. But you got to throw all those seed pods in the garbage. Don't put them on the ground because they'll seed there. I don't think you're going to have a problem with millennium, but there are others that might be a problem. Simple to cut them back.
Yeah, because they can make a lot of seed if you let them go brown, and there's enough moisture in there for them to keep going brown. Do you have any? We can go in order. The wormwoods or artemisias are blooming in August, a lot of them, but we're really growing them for the foliage color more than anything else. And aster, which also had its name changed to Symphyotrichum. Is that how we say that? I don't even know. That's one that the rabbits do seem to like to eat, but I always thought it was kind of neat. We put a cage over the plant and the rabbit could only eat where the aster got beyond the cage. And so the rabbits actually pinched the asters for us, which was kind of nice.
Good thought. Clever.
Yeah, once it got to be older, it seemed like they didn't like to eat it as much either. So such is the way of things. There are so many good asters. We have deer problems here, and deer they're tough on asters.
Well, aster is a good plant for more reasons than one.
Yeah. For those of you who are in the shade, there's big leaf aster. I think you had this growing in your garden where where we came to work with you, didn't you? The big leaf aster with the August blooming white or lilac colored flowers on it.
I think so. We have had so many different things in the gardens over the year. I forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that there are asters for the shade too, and it makes a nice ground cover. The deer do eat it if you have deer that live in the shade, but they don't seem to kill the plant. And that's
I love anemones. The whole family of anemones for the fall blooming are fabulous. Oh yeah, you had astilbes. Well, I guess we can bounce around, can't we?
yeah. So do you have any favorite anemones?
I love whirlwind. There's so many new varieties on the market, by the way, that are much dwarfer. I like Honorine Joubert, but it can get very, very tall and maybe is not suitable for many gardens. Whirlwind is a white, which is much lower and double, and I like that.
Pumala. Pumala's great.
Pumila?
Well,
I don't think I know that one.
are you talking about astilbes or anemones?
No, anemone, it's the purpley one.
Oh, okay.
Purpley. I must have
That's
the
a
wrong.
technical term. Yeah.
Sorry. A technical term.
See how technical us experts get?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like how they lift their flowers up, and we've put in a couple of the shorter varieties here so that we can see what they're like. But I'm afraid that the short is going to mean that they're going to have short stems. Is that the case? That the taller ones, the height is all in the flower stem, like here, and the shorter ones, the flowers are born closer down to the leaves?
Yeah, but all of them have flower stems above the leaf so that you do see the flowers.
That's
It depends on what height you want. And Steve, you and I discussed this. The growers who grow for the big box stores don't want anything that's more than a foot tall, because it just takes so much space in a truck to deliver it, and which is kind of silly. So if you like tall anemones, you really have to go to an independent store where they don't really care that much. But it's a great genus, by the way. The anemone japonica. There's various Impatiens. There's various other forms. And I think they're underused. I think people don't buy plants that bloom in the fall other than chrysanthemums. And I don't know why, because there's some beautiful plants, as we are discussing, that bloom at this time of year and later.
And they can take shade too.
And they can take a lot of shade. Chrysanthemums cannot.
Yeah.
Okay.
My experience is it's the way the plants are marketed. When we walk into a nursery, it's always the plants in bloom. So the fall bloomers aren't out there in June and when people are in their buying frenzy. They don't have the anemones and the asters and those out
I think
yet.
it's a codependence thing. The sellers need to sell, right, Pierre? But also the buyers want to buy things with flowers on them.
Well,
we
True.
by the way, there's a lot of truth to that, and it isn't wrong. The thing is that if you want a garden that blooms pretty well or has something in bloom pretty well through the season, you have to visit your garden center when it's blooming if you want to see what it looks like. If you only go to your garden center in May and June, you're going to end up with a lot of flowers that are only bloom in May and June, and then you're not going to have much of anything in the summer and fall. But there are so many good plants that bloom in the summer and the fall that you're missing.
can I break in to ask a couple anemone questions from the chat?
Sure.
Yeah, so Lily is noting that the anemone, the ones that are blooming now, they spread by root and took over my whole garden. And Nancy is asking about anemones that don't spread as fast. Any advice there?
No, they all spread pretty fast. I don't know.
Yeah, they all spread. I don't find them to be as bad as people make them out. And I think that's because I know they're going to spread. And so every spring you look for where they're spreading to and say, okay, I'm drawing a line right here. The people that seem to have the most problem are the people who let them just spread for 5 or 10 years and then
realize,
try.
oh, when did they get so big?
Yeah, I tried to help someone out who had 30 years in the garden and had never tried to rein in the Japanese anemone.
I think that's
Yeah.
And they're not a
That's-
difficult one to edit out of the garden either, I would have to say.
Right, because they're growing from that, that root goes sideways and comes up just outside the mother plant where there's no shade from the mother plant. And where they're coming up there, I can just reach down in and break them off of where they were coming from. It's not quite so bad as the bishop's weed.
This
So
brings me
Donna,
to- go ahead.
I was going to say that, so Donna in the chat saying constant vigilance is the way here. But actually, while we're on the subject of the roots and the direction they go, Judith is saying she's never succeeded with anemones of any kind. She thinks it's because she doesn't know which direction to plant the bulbs in. So some advice about working with root planting for anemones. She says same issue with liatris.
She might be talking about the anemones that are the spring blooming anemone coronaria that does grow from a corm. These are herbaceous.
Yeah, the Japanese anemones are not bulb forming perennials. There are a couple of anemone decon and St. Bridget, which are bulb forming plants that bloom in the spring, and maybe that's what she's thinking about. I think they're anemone coronaria types. I think the problem with some anemones is they are maybe not hardy beyond zone 6 and colder than zone 6, and it may be a frost problem. I don't know.
I know that at the Royal Botanical Garden in Hamilton one year, when it was particularly cold in the winter, they died back, and the gardeners decided, well, we'll remake the bed while they're doing this. So they remade the bed.
They will propagate from root cutting, by the way.
That's right. They remade the bed, and in July, up
Yeah.
came all the
Right.
When you remake the bed and don't get out all the root.
Yeah.
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 I had a friend, a late friend, Fred McGurdy, who had was growing. He loved anemones, and he also loved ferns. And I asked him about one of his ferns, and he said, or I think about one of his anemones, and he said, well, you know, with fronds like this, who needs anemones?
Oh, Pierre, that's so bad.
Yeah.
And you're laying it at Fred's feet. Okay, let's get a couple other plants in, because I know Pierre has got a plant sale going on, Sunny Border. Pierre is trying to retire, but then that's what plant people do a lot. Yeah, but he is running weekend plant sales at Sunny Border Nursery and got beautiful plants of all kinds out there. So he's going to be leaving soon, and we need to hear about this. So Cheryl, I think you had something to say about the dwarf astilbes and
Yes, I'm sorry. Astilbe, Pierre was right. Astilbe pumila, which I absolutely love. And I had miscorrected, had said anemone, but it is Astilbe. And wow, that is just a fabulous plant for a ground cover. Very hard for weeds to poke through or to get started once you get that going as a ground cover in your landscape. Great fall color, and it lasts for a long time.
and it blooms later than the other astilbes.
They
Yes.
bloom later. They bloom July and August. Other astilbes, in order to keep them in bloom, you have to keep them moist. Astilbes in parts of Germany will bloom all summer long because they get a lot of rain, and it's cool. Typically, I guess not this year, but Anemone chinensis pumila is very drought resistant and will continue to bloom, and even in considerable shade. Makes a great ground cover. Pumila, by the way, means short or small in Latin. So it's not as tall as some, but it's a really profusely blooming plant. Underused.
And the plant itself, just any of the astilbes are great additions to the garden space.
And they come in a variety of heights. We have one called Korean Splendor that gets up pretty close to 3 feet tall, but most of them are about 1.5 to 2 feet tall.
Is Korean Splendor a chinensis variety?
It is probably, a subspecies from Korea. I can only guess with the name Korean Splendor that comes from Korea, but it's very much taller than chinensis pumila, and blooms at the same time. It's much later than the other ones.
Oh, that's great. That's
I
great.
think I saw that.
We like them late.
Yeah.
Okay.
While we're on astilbes, Jay Kessler is curious about the best time to divide them.
In the spring. You can divide them in the fall after they bloom. You cut them back. I mean, in late September and October, you can do that. But really, it's better to do it early spring if you can. They have a massive. It's not a bulb. An old plant has a massive woody base, and I'm not sure what that's called. And you need probably a small saw or a machete to cut them apart, but doesn't bother them at all. You can cut them up into chunks and replant them, and they'll come right back again. They're very, very easy to work with.
Yeah, they are. Let's talk about something that people probably don't know about. How about some Vernonias? You had at least a couple at the nursery.
Well, the one Steve took one of the small dwarf one with very, very fine foliage.
Iron butterfly. Huh?
That's it, iron butterfly. That one blooms September, October. It has small purple flowers, and it's a very pretty plant. Again, a plant that doesn't sell because it doesn't sell so well because it blooms so late, and people don't want to buy plants that don't bloom earlier. The native one around here is called Vernonia glauca. Glauca meaning bluish foliage. That one's a medium height of maybe 2 to 2.5 feet. And then we also have the New York Vernonia, Vernonia novaboracensis, which grows 7 feet sometimes. I mean, it's a huge, huge plant.
That's the first one that Steve and I saw, and we said we saw it in August. We saw it blooming purple, just like this picture right here. I made him stop on the freeway so that I could run out on the verge and find out what that plant was over there.
We've done that stop on the freeway frequently. I think you can relate.
By the way, the genus Vernonia goes all the way down through Central America into South America. It's one of the few genera that is both in the North and South Hemisphere of the New World. And there are tropical forms, which of course are not hardy here, but the ones I've just described are very hardy here.
Any idea why it's called ironweed, Pierre? You tend to collect these.
Not a clue.
Okay.
But I think it's a very easy weed, plant, weed, call it what you will, to grow. I don't find it invasive, by the way. We do have it in fields here. You'll see it in hedgerows and in hay fields where there's a bit of moisture. It's not uncommon, but it's not invasive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's nice. I saw that you have one of our favorite plants, Helianthus, which blooms. It does start blooming earlier, but darn, you deadhead this guy, and it just goes and goes and goes. And Steve showed me this one. Is it called Burning Hearts or something like?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a Helianthus. That may be a Rudbeckia. They're very closely related.
Well,
Okay, you think it is a Helianthus?
Yeah,
there are many Helianthus. There are some dwarf ones that get no taller than a foot. A breeder down in New Zealand bred a whole bunch of them. We're in the trade for a while. I haven't seen them for a few years. And then there are some that get to be 8 feet tall. It's a very variable plant in terms of height. Mostly they're yellow, but some of them have some bronzy red colors in them.
That was it. Well, I guess we'll figure that one out later. We'll figure out for sure what this one is. Steve is telling me that he thinks it's something else, but it's got the leaves of the Helianthus.
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a plant that I don't see people using. It stands up so straight, it blooms so long, it's just so willing, and it seems like more people should be using them. What about in the shade? You had quite the collection of what were used to be called semisifugas in your old garden, and now they're all actias, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
I never quite bought that change in names, but
Peter still refers to them as semisifugas.
yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, so do we.
Well,
It's a cooler name.
the ones with the bronzy purple leaves, I think, are really, really nice. And the picture you're showing right now illustrates one important point. There are no flowers in it, and yet it's very pretty. You've got the Japanese painted fern in front and the Simicifuga alias actia in the middle and hosta behind. I mean, it's a very pretty scene without a single flower. It's the idea that a garden is all flowers is kind of not true with perennials. You need to use combinations of interesting foliage. They all will bloom. Well, not the ferns, but most of the plants will bloom. But you want them to look nice all year round. And you can do this with a lot of foliage contrast, not only colors of the foliage, but different shapes of leaves. And that picture illustrates it perfectly.
Oh, that's great to hear. We sometimes stand out there in the cold in the fall, begging the plant to bloom because this blooms so late.
So, yeah.
It's like, please, are you gonna do this or not? We tell
And
them.
that was at their wedding in October.
Yeah, this was from your wedding. This was from
This
Cheryl
was
and Pierre's
Cheryl
wedding.
and Pierre's.
Oh,
yeah,
no kidding.
From their wedding, and that was in October, and it's in it. You could still see it's coming. It's still
There's
coming into
buds.
bloom.
Yeah, there's buds still coming on there. Whoops, that's the wrong thing. Okay, so anyway, fall fairy candles. I think people in the shade should be using them more, and I'm glad to hear that you're giving them reasons to use them elsewhere.
Well, our native Simicifuga racemosa blooms in June, July. The ones with the bronze purpley leaves are late bloomers, but they're mostly species from China and Japan. Our native species blooms much earlier, and is, by the way, a very nice plant as well.
Tell us about gentians, Pierre and Cheryl. Everybody wants blue. There's so little blue. Like you said, it's the most rare color in nature, the true blue.
Yeah, right. I think there are native gentians here. Traveling in China, I saw a huge selection of gentians. They must have 25 different species. I think there are 2 native species around this part of New England, and really quite rare. One of them growing almost in water, so-called bottle gentian. But yes, it's a rare color. They're a bit hard to grow. They don't like our hot summers. They don't like to dry out. And
Okay.
you will find them looking very sad, kind of parched looking if you don't keep them wet, which is a shame. But you can't plant everything in this climate, you know. Unless you want to be careful.
It's true, but it would be so nice to have a reliable gentian someplace. We managed to keep one for 3 years, I think, in clients' gardens, and we've got one that's
2.5.
Yeah, that's into its 3rd year here, but yeah, but it would be nice to see these just going and going and going because they're such pretty plants, and we have that native one, the bottle gentian too, the closed gentian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful plant. I like this picture because you have the background of the pale gray rock. It makes it brings the color of the blue out so nicely.
That was a gorgeous set of gentians that then a truck hit those rocks, kicked them up, hit our house with the rocks. Truck ended up on our lawn, and unfortunately lost one of those clumps of gentians. I am still salty about it.
Yes,
Oh.
And
I can understand.
And I can't understand actually why these gentians like, but maybe it is the water. The soil at Sonia's house is quite a heavy clay with a lot of rock at the base. And this is on a slope going down, so it could be that it just gets so getting that much more water.
And maybe it's cooler at the base where it matters, as opposed to being too hot, humidity getting to it. It might be able to have the roots be a cooler.
Yeah, the rock might be providing not only shade, but some rocks absorb moisture and let it back out into the soil, so they could also be supplying some moisture that we don't know.
And what's great fun is that none of us really know. We all just guess.
Maybe also supplying some alkalinity. There's often, lime, garden lime and rocks, and, it slowly dissolves into the soil. I don't know.
I would have to, before we move on, just say that Daryl Probst, a breeder in Massachusetts, came up with True Blue, gentian True Blue. And that
Daryl plant, I've seen it.
yeah, that's one that in our own garden lasted about 4 to 5 years. We got it in the very beginning of 5 years, and then it petered out. But that's a really nice one.
Okay, so we'll look for
Yes.
True Blue then.
Yeah.
I saw that at a nursery once and wondered whether it was and it's different. It's so neat to talk to people who have, when you say you have a colleague in Oregon and you have colleagues all over the world. You were part of the movement that started the Perennial Plant Association. You were both into it. You were in school in Denmark, Cheryl?
My father went to school in Denmark. Cheryl went to school in Holland.
Yeah. So all these breeders are there new plants coming?
All the time, yes.
So you think they'll keep coming even though people are retiring and going away?
No, they're going to keep coming. I'm pretty confident that there are all sorts of things coming on the market, things that were unknown 25 and certainly 50 years ago.
Like digitalis plexus.
Digiflex.
Yes, it was.
Plexus. Oh my gosh.
Someone told us that was
I
going
had
to be a
pictures
zone
of that.
7 plant, that it was a cross between foxglove and the digiplexus, or anyway.
Right.
I think it's on its 4th year in a strong zone 5 now.
Yeah.
All right.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, Skagit, I think Skagit was the first one to introduce that. Of course, when they're introducing, they've already tested it around several test gardens around the United States and overseas. So they have a good idea, but they're out in Oregon, aren't they?
No, they're
Skagit?
in Washington State. Yeah.
Washington.
Close enough.
Yeah.
out there in God's country, or it was God's
That's right.
country.
That's right.
Well, if I started.
Yeah.
Well, I wish that I had your connections, because I would like somebody to do something with Collinsonia, with richweed, which grows in a closet. It's so shady, as long as it's moist, rich soil, and it blooms these nice yellow flowers in August, and it gets as big as a small hydrangea. This one is just a skimpy little guy that I stole from the woods. I kept trying to start it from seed, and I finally pinched off a piece, and it rooted quite readily. But I think there's probably a lot to be said for good flower breeders doing something cool with that, and
Working with those.
I would agree with you. Yes.
What
absolutely.
family is it in, Janet?
mint family.
Pardon?
Mint family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's another plant that the rabbits won't eat.
Well, we're certainly hoping so. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, rabbits and deer.
Okay, let's are there any questions coming in, Sonia? Because we'll just go through in order here. Broad
Yeah,
state-
we do actually have a request from Elizabeth to talk about Pearly Everlasting.
Okay.
Yep, let's go.
You guys know Pearly Everlasting. Let's see.
Yeah.
Anaphalis?
Annapolis. Yeah.
Annapolis, yeah. Steve had talked while we were all together about that. It's a fabulous plant as far as like the flower, but it also the larva for the little painted, is it painted ladies, Steve?
The American lady.
I could never remember. It's always, I have to
And the
rely
painted-
on my
The painted
experts.
lady is the one that looks like her but can live on everything.
Mhm.
Kale can eat the aster family, can eat the rose family, can eat, but the American lady can only eat the Annapolis, the Arnica, and
Yeah. So I had it backwards. I think I said painted lady. So
yeah, I've always liked it, and it's a native plant. It's another one of those neat natives that once you grow it, then you say, wait, I think I've seen that growing somewhere.
and
It dries well, it cuts well, and it seems to do okay in part shade. which surprised me. I found it growing in part shade up by Steve's great uncle's place.
Mhm.
Those are very drought resistant, which is good in certain types of soil.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, we have it.
yeah, yeah. It's seeding
It's
itself
native,
out.
by the way. There are forms of it all the way across the northern hemisphere, through China, all the way through Asia into Europe. And the Edelweiss, that is a cousin of the Anaphylis.
Right, and they can live on that too, the American ladies.
Yeah.
We just don't want to get rid of the caterpillars. If you see something is chewing away on it, chances are it's the butterfly yet to form into a
Yes.
butterfly. And don't be killing off the caterpillars, or else you're killing off the larva for them.
Yeah, people worry about it, but by the time the plant grows up past the caterpillar damage without any
When-
trouble at all.
When it's a heavy infestation, it can look like it's really getting destroyed.
But it just pinches the
And
plant.
2 weeks later, it's
Zoop, boop. I need to make a comment about this. This is a Physocygia obedient plant, which is not obedient at all, and then it's a runner around. This is the variegated form, and Stephen actually let you keep those plants, Pierre, despite the fact that he
I
knows.
didn't pay attention. Do you know how many plants we went by and talked about?
I
I grabbed the sedums.
last summer, I put the word out to people and said, it's not available anymore, and it's so slow to build back up again. Does anybody have any that we could have a start of? And we got a teeny tiny start. Which
I
that's
feel so
going.
bad
And
now that I
Stephen
forgot about
let
it.
you keep those
I
plants at
stood
your
right in
nursery,
front of it and took a picture of it.
rather.
I should have grabbed some of those.
Yeah.
Next time.
By the way, Daryl Probst, the same breeder that we discussed earlier, has a plant of Physocygia, which is called Miss Manners. There's a pink form and a white form, and it doesn't have rhizomes. It is a clumper rather than a spreader. It tends to be lower. The variegated form is basically a variegated form of the wild natural one. It gets 3 feet tall. His get maybe what, a foot tall? Maybe
Yeah, 18 inches.
maybe
I would
18
say.
inches. And they're very nice. So if you're looking for one that is not invasive at all, then try Miss Manners, either the pink or the white.
Okay, when I was growing these from seed back when, the white one blooms earlier than the pink, doesn't it?
I don't think so. There is a form that blooms later in the fall, blooms in September.
Vivid? Isn't it vivid?
Physocygia vivid, which is also
Vivid. Okay,
vivid, is a very nice pink form. It blooms in September and October. Also not terribly tall, but that one does have runners. But I've never seen it seed itself, and I've never seen it be terribly invasive. It'll clump, spread out a little bit. It's nice. Vivid's a very good plant. I haven't seen it in the marketplace recently, but it's a good plant.
okay, good.
Yeah.
That's one we're gonna have to.
You know,
look
it's
for.
called obedient plant because you can arrange the flowers on the stem, and they stay where you put them. And so people that are into flower arranging have a blast with it because they don't have to fumble around like you do sometimes with your blooms and flower, in vases. You just put it in, and then you turn your flower where you want it, and the flowers will stay individually or as a group. It's pretty
Oh.
cool that way.
Obedient, okay.
Yeah.
All right, we get mixed reviews from people on one of our favorite plants here for late color, which is used to be a Eupatorium and now it's a conoclinum, the perennial ageratum. Do you grow it? Do you like it?
We've grown it in the past. I've never been terribly enamored by it. It's quite a spreader. If it likes where it is, it can be invasive. It is native. It's kind of a wishy-washy bluey lavender color. It's not very impressive to me. There's a white form, by the way. I'm metza about that plant. I would say I would not want to put it in my garden.
Okay, all right,
Yep,
good.
good.
So that is a mixed bag thing. We have a variety called Corey, and I have a son named
Yes,
Corey.
yeah.
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 Pierre had that, yes, for a number of years at the nursery.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a nice one. Well behaved, I would have to say.
Compared.
And then there's the real blue of plumbago. which-
That's a great plant. Also a spreader, but it'll start blooming here in June with those beautiful blue flowers, green foliage. And by sometime late August, they start turning that crimson red, the leaves. Such a nice contrast. You've got green leaves, crimson red, and blue all working together. It's a magic plant, but it's a spreader. It's a good plant for the front of a border. It's not something you want to put into the middle of it's not very tall, is what I'm saying,
Yeah.
but it will spread.
Yeah, and it too would you have to cut and take some out sometimes. We like to use it to cover up bulbs because it doesn't come up real early in the spring. It waits and bides its time.
We've had
Right. Great
we've had
idea.
clients say I lost it.
No, it's not.
It's
It'll
coming.
be there. It'll be there. Yeah, they're pretty cool. And they are true blue.
Yes, yes.
You had plume poppy at your old garden, but that was a big garden with lots of room. We debated whether we should put big plants on the list because so many people don't have room for a cup plant or a plume poppy or things that take up a lot of room like that.
Not only does it have rhizomes, it has long rhizomes that'll pop out in the middle of your lawn and wherever. It is a beautiful plant, but you're constantly whacking back its unwanted progeny.
That's good. That's good for
Yes.
people to know. Now,
Mm.
coneflowers, what incredible colors are in coneflowers now. And they're still calling them all Echinacea purpurea hybrids, but they're like hybridized back and forth between 2 or 3 or 4 species, aren't they, to get these colors?
I'm not sure
Yeah,
how they've done
Pallida.
this.
Pallida was
There is a yellow form. There is one called Paradoxa, which is a yellow form. So between Paradoxa and Purpurea, you've got oranges, you've got whatever. There's some beautiful, clean red ones now. The name Purpurea indicates that they're purple, but by my vision, they're more pink than purple.
Yes.
But they have such a range of colors and fully double ones, which frankly I don't particularly like. Their double flowers tend to be heavier and they tend to flop over more. But I like the ones in this picture. The ones in the upper left, it looks almost like a badminton birdie when it's blooming.
Yeah.
It's a great plant. Blooms a long time. And all the new cultivars are spectacular, I think.
You
He
said
has a
there's one
red
called Red Magnet out right now, right?
Oh, there's 3 dozen out in every year, it seems. I can't keep up with all the new varieties.
Yeah.
What's that real bright red one you had there? Or is that the bee balm that was the bee balm? Never mind.
Well, I had a
No,
bright
there
red.
is a bright
Okay.
red
Monarch.
echinacea
Yes.
that you have. What is the name of that?
I
Oh,
can't-
sure. Okay, this is one of those where we have so much knowledge and
Nobody can recall
no
it.
recall, no
Yeah.
recall.
Yeah.
It's-
My memory's perfect. My recall is terrible.
We will get that for you today and we will text you the information, Janet.
It was a really great, nice red one.
Yeah.
Well, we're-
That red Monarda bee balm, I can't remember the name of that one either, but that's really good red.
Was that?
That
the
was a really
one?
good.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the new Monarda.
The new Monarda,
Something bee.
bee
There's a whole bee
friendly
series.
red or something like that.
We'll have that for you too.
Yeah.
We'll text you that later.
Okay, well, we need to start wrapping up.
Yeah.
All right.
Tell people our favorite, one each favorite plant. Either something on the list or something not on the list for late. I'm gonna grab clematis, so nobody else take clematis.
Well, my favorite plant is whatever's blooming at the time, that probably isn't going to work. So the other favorite plant is one that other people can't pronounce, like, things like hosta, oh, what's the one I was thinking of? But you know, long-sounding names. But no, I'm just being silly. I love the Cimicifugas, Alias Actias. Those new introductions are really quite stunning. They're, to me, and not because of flower, but because of the foliage. So I would say that's one plant that I would like. I do like a lot.
Okay.
What would you say?
I love Cleome for it. It's not for every garden, but boy, I like it a lot.
The
It
one
does bloom for a long time, turtlehead. It just
it's also
goes and goes.
it's also a good pollinator. It's totally native. There are a lot of people that insist on only native plants. The hybrid called
Hot lips.
Hot Lips has a stronger pink. The two native species, glabra and obliqua, are rather pale pink. Hot Lips has a pretty strong rose pink flower and doesn't get as tall as the other. It gets maybe 2 feet max. In the wild here, they get about 3 feet. Anyway, that's a great plant.
And I'm going to add Tricertus, even though I was only supposed to give one. Tricertus is very underutilized, I think, but it's not always readily available, and for sure not in usually the big box stores.
No.
But that definitely is a gorgeous, looks like little orchids, little teeny tiny gorgeous flowers.
Mm.
I think a lot of people don't realize that toad lily is like bee balm, that it forms a big clump and, you know, just gets bigger and bigger.
Bigger and bigger as
Yeah.
it grows. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are early ones and later ones, and variegated leaf ones, and pink edged flowers, and there's a lot of different toad lilies that people could be collecting and putting in. I have a client who has very difficult deer issues and toad lily, and the deer have been, her toad lily is growing better from being browsed.
Oh, interesting.
It blooms quite late, but it has spread out like you wouldn't believe. It didn't grow up, it just grew out in all directions. So now there's more of it than there would be otherwise. It's pretty amazing, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One a quick deer story. We grow probably 50 plus varieties of hosta, and we have a reserve shade tent down in the back of the property where Steve and I wandered around. The deer got into the shade house, and for reasons I cannot explain, ate the tops off one variety only. And they nibbled on all the others, but they decided that they liked Hosta Franci, and they completely ate the foliage on all of the Hosta Franci, and other than a nibble here and there, didn't touch another hosta. Now, you explain that to me.
That makes perfect sense to me. I like some types of tomatoes and not other types of tomatoes. I mean, they're
There you go.
right down to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's well known that when a deer is hungry, it'll eat anything. But in this case, I got to say, that one really surprised me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to put in a plug for the clematis, that more people should be doing things with clematis. And it's correct, you guys, clematis, clematis, clematis.
Heraclifolium Davidiana.
Yeah, right now we have the hybrid. I think it's a hybrid with Heraclifolium called Mrs. Robert Bryden, where each one.
Yeah, that's a cross between Davidiana and Recta, I believe. But I think the one I have is, or I had in the garden, was Hosta Heraclifolia Davidiana. I'm sorry, Clematis Heraclifolia Davidiana. Mrs. Robert Bryden is a cross between Recta and the Heraclifolium.
And your
and a very
picture
good
is
plant.
gorgeous.
And for those who don't realize this, it is not a vine climber, it is a bush form. Most people think of clematis, and correctly so, as a vine, but this particular one is more of a bush than a vine.
Yeah, we just whack it right down to the ground every year and let it come back up.
Yeah.
A good thing to put on top of bulbs. But there are so many, everybody's into. So Mrs. Robert Bryden has clusters of flowers rather than, I don't know if it's fragrant. I'm waiting to find that one out, but this one is very fragrant, Davidiana. I find that people are so wrapped up in the great big hybrids earlier in the year that they're missing all of these. Look at this clematis. Look at those hanging bells.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, these are the cool things to have, and many of these late blooming ones like Viticella and Juliana.
Get great seed pods
Yeah,
too.
seed pods.
Yeah.
So more people should be looking at clematis, and you're probably going to have to order them. It's not if they won't carry things at big box stores over a foot tall, they're certainly not going to wrestle with vines. You know, they're just not going to carry vines. But you can buy them by mail and get the starts on them to be able to grow some of these really, really cool plants, including the fall clematis, which I don't grow anymore because it's just
Is
too
aggressive.
weedy, too many seeds come
But
up
if
all
you
over
have
the
a big
place.
spot where you want it to just ramble and mingle, it does a great job.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, I've got to put a little last push in for my small little nursery now, which used to be a big nursery, selling off at very, very, very fair prices. A lot of the inventory that was left over when I decided to close down the nursery. I'm at 2289 Chamberlain Highway in the town of Berlin, Connecticut. If anybody in Southern New England wants to buy some great plants, we still have over 500 different plants, and we'd love to see you. So thank you.
Sunday.
Saturday morning and Sunday morning.
2289 Chamberlain Highway in Berlin.
2289 Chamberlain Highway in the Kensington section of Berlin, Connecticut. And we're there every Saturday and Sunday morning only. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for
much,
being
you
here,
guys.
you guys.
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed it, and have a wonderful weekend.
You too.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you, Cheryl.
You
Bye.
bet.
Bye.
And for those who are still here, we'll take your questions now and see what we can do from there on out. Should we?
Fantastic. So I couldn't quite get it in time before Pierre and Cheryl left, but Stacy's wondering if it's sombrero salsa red is the monarda that, or sorry, the echinacea that is
Echinacea.
particularly red.
Sombrero.
Is that the one you
red.
have, sombrero?
No.
We did grow the sombrero series about, I want to say 7 years ago, and it is a good series. The entire whole varieties that are
No,
available.
this is a newer strain. I actually got the plants from Creek Hill Nurseries, which is run by Ron Strasko, a former employee of mine and a great guy. And he's a wholesale grower. And I think Lansdowne, Pennsylvania, or no, Leola, Pennsylvania. But
We'll get the
get back
names.
to you. We'll
Yep.
get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
No,
Is there a plant availability list for the sale? They do have a catalog. You're going to need to go to the nursery to get it because they're not mailing them out. They're trying to retire.
Yes.
Keep trying to retire. Third generation grower can never, ever, ever actually get his hands out of the pot. The bush clematis on the list on the outline for the week, it's there, and it's clematis Heracleofolia, like Hercules, big leaves. Clematis Heracleofolia, variety Davidiana. So Father David collected it in China back in his wanderings through the wilds of China back in the days when you weren't supposed to be doing that, and he was very good at sneaking plants out. It was good to hear Pierre was also sneaking things out.
Well, they all did.
All right, so you.
Okay, all right. Yep, we do have some questions, some follow-ups. And just to clarify from what happened in the chat, Amy, I was replying about the clematis, the bush clematis is the top of page 4. I was not telling you to go to top of page 4 for the fairy candles. Okay, all right. So we have got, just quickly, I wanted to wrap up a couple of the annuals and shrubs questions from the August blog suggestions. Janet is curious if the annuals seed themselves, will those seeds bloom the same summer or would it be a next year?
They bloom the same summer. The annuals have a 1-year cycle. That's
That's
all.
why they're annual.
Yeah, that's all they're trying to do is get up and bloom. There are some biennial.
But I mean, you wouldn't get kind of 2 cycles in a year.
Oh
the,
yeah,
the seeds would overwinter. They would. Okay.
well, yeah, you quite often get a cycle, and that's one of the nice things about it. So you'll get a spring bloom where the first group of plants that grew, that sprouted, bloomed. And then you get the next younger group, which gets older at a different time and blooms later. So they'll bloom throughout the year, but each group of plants they're not going to wait until the next year.
Okay, great. Carol is curious whether Caryopteris, the blue mist, are they short-lived shrubs? I said mine crapped it out after a hard winter, but do they tend to be short-lived if the winters are not hard?
They are not short-lived shrubs if they are in good drainage, but there is a problem. I have been trying, I think this is the third year now, to find Caryopteris at a nursery that are not infested with area-fed mites. And that's weakening the plants.
We may have to wait a little while before.
I've talked to a couple of growers to tell them that I think they're propagating from infested stock. So if people have lost them recently, in the last 6 or 7 years, I would say, I would lay money that there was a mite infestation involved, as well as other problems that there might have been. Because when they're in a good place, they're fine.
Okay, this will be a very quick answer, just confirming what I answered in the chat. My Rose of Sharon, Judith says, is a one-story monster with branches nearly as wide as my wrist. Can I really cut it to the ground?
Yes.
What is it that's as?
Rose of Sharon.
Oh, yes, you can definitely saw it. Right to
okay.
Yes.
That was me, and someone else also said, yeah, cut that sucker down. So just to confirm, Judith, from the experts as well, cut it down. All right.
Are all experts. Don't sell yourself.
Sorry, from the official experts. Nancy is curious about blackberry lily, how to keep it from laying down other than staking.
Well, once they bloom, you have to stake them unless you're going to deadhead them, because it's not so much the weight as the hormones in the plant. Once they start making seed, the plant needs to stretch its cells out and lay the seed down away from itself.
They don't want the seed falling into its crown. They
Yeah.
want the seed out. So plants tend to do that. Once they go to seed, they start to open up.
So my answer has been to grow it in a plant that holds it up. So grow it in prairie drop seed, grow it in perennial fountain grass, grow your blackberry lily in just the same way that plants stay up on the prairie. They're leaning on each other.
Okay, great. Donna is curious about Helianthus. She says this year her established Helianthus completely died back. Was it the wet weather? The stems turned black, then the leaves collapsed. Should I remove the plant?
That sounds like aster yellows. The entire aster family is susceptible to the virus called aster yellows. And it's in a wet year, it can be worse than other times. And if you see it, especially if the crown turns black and then the leaves die back, it's a good idea to take that plant out rather than have the debris start spreading it around elsewhere. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. Just for a piece of interest here, Shelley was saying that her mite-infested Caryopteris has reseeded and she has 2 new variegated yellow. She weeded out the reverted ones. She's calling it a test to see what the 2 do in the future.
Oh, that's great. That's very good. And yeah, there are ways around everything, aren't there?
See what happens.
Yep.
Okay, great. Nancy is curious about the difference between woodland poppy and plume poppy.
Woodland poppy is a 18-inch tall, yellow blooming, mostly blooming in the spring, off and on through the summer, native plant. Plume poppy is not native, is 6 or 7 feet tall, and has a running root system, whereas
They might not even be in the same genus. Same family.
I'm not sure if they're in the same family or not.
Yeah.
But Stylophorum is the wood poppy, and Maclea, so they're not real closely related. Just common name.
Yeah, Michelle is curious, and I think Teresa or someone also agreed, curious. If you buy a new kind of coneflower and you put it in the garden with the old kind, will they cross-pollinate?
They will, and if you let seeds come up, you're going to
get a lot of cool stuff.
we
That's what I thought was happening in our yard.
yeah. I I have I would like to show a rabbit picture, a rabbit story here before we go.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Tips, aiming for answers in the
That-
summer. Okay.
Yeah, no, we actually got, we've pretty much run through the August Blas question, aside from just a quick Toad Lily question about it's petering out. Would it be in too much shade? And the chat consensus seems to be that no, the shade probably isn't the issue. Anything else that might cause a Toad Lily to peter out?
Drought could be a problem with it. And it is it's a rhizome type root. And if the soil is dry and not very organic, the root doesn't have a lot of stability and it doesn't have a lot of reason to make side roots. And so the plant starts starving. So you might want compost in that area so that it keeps some moisture in the soil and some organic matter.
Okay.
Great. All right. Find the bunny picture.